Between 1982 and 1984, a predator haunted the highways of the Midwest, hunting many young men and boys in a storm of violence that would leave 20 families destroyed. His name was Larry Eyler. He was known to the press as the Highway Killer, and for 2 years, his crimes stretched across Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin, and Kentucky, leaving a trail of bodies so gruesome it paralyzed investigators. This is the disturbing story of Larry Eyler and the men and boys whose lives he stole. Larry William Eyler was born December the 21st, 1952, in Crawfordsville, Indiana. His childhood was steeped in instability. An alcoholic father, a mother stretched thin by poverty, and a pattern of violence that would foreshadow what later came. And by his teens, Larry Eyler knew he was gay, a fact that caused deep shame in conservative 1960s Indiana. He dropped out of school, drifting through jobs as a mechanic, a house painter, and a short order cook. In the 1970s, Eyler settled in Chicago, where he lived with his older brother John. Outwardly, he was quiet, polite, and even soft-spoken, but beneath that, something darker brewed: rage, repression, and a violent compulsion towards domination. Between 1982 and 1984, that rage would erupt, leaving the Midwest littered with shallow graves. Larry Eyler's first known victim was Stephen Malcolm Crockett, who was 19 years old at the time. His body was found October the 23rd, 1982, in Kankakee County, Illinois, bound, stabbed, and abandoned in a field. A week later came another man by the name of Edward Anthony Underkoffler. He was aged 26. He disappeared October the 30th, 1982, and would later be found dead in Vermilion County, Illinois. Both men had been last seen hitchhiking or leaving gay bars, a common pattern that would define Larry Eyler's victims. They needed to be young, vulnerable, often gay or transient, and lured by the promise of a ride or quick cash. On November the 20th, 1982, William Joseph Lewis, at the age of 19, would meet a similar fate when he vanished, and then his body was discovered almost a year later, October the 15th, 1983, in Jasper County, Indiana. Then, the next victim would be Stephen Ray Egan, who was 23 and murdered around December the 19th, 1982, and found December the 28th in Vermilion County, Indiana. Coincidentally, that same day, police uncovered another body by the name of John Lee Roach, who was 21, from Putnam County, Indiana. By the end of 1982, 4 young men were dead, and the pattern was clear. They were all found near highways. They were all bound, stabbed, and mutilated. But the police still had no idea who would be behind it. Larry Eyler's violence intensified in the year of 1983, and his victims multiplied. In January, he murdered Erwin Dwayne Gibson, a 16-year-old, last seen hiking near Chicago. Eventually, his body would surface April the 15th, 1983, in Lake County, Illinois. By March, Larry Eyler claimed John Daniel Barlett, who was 19, as well as Michael Christopher Bauer, who was 22. They were both discovered October 18th, 1983, in a wooded area of Newton County, Indiana. Then there was another young man by the name of Richard Arthur Wayne Jr., 17, who was found December the 7th, 1983, in Hendricks County, Indiana. The list of names grew faster than police could even process. And in April 1983, the body of Gustavo Pineda Herrera, 26, appeared in Lake County, Illinois, brutally stabbed and dumped like garbage. And soon, a month later, Jimmy T. Roberts, 18, was found May 9th, 1983, in Cook County, Illinois. These weren't random acts. Larry Eyler was on the road constantly, driving interstates 65, 70, and 94. In October 1983, Indiana State Police made a horrifying discovery near a rural field in Newton County. 4 bodies, all young men and boys buried together. Among them were John Ingram Bradenberg Jr., who was 19, Keith Lavelle Bibbs, who was 16, and 2 were unidentified victims later confirmed through DNA as Michael Bauer and John Burlett, both already on Eyler's list. The Newton County site proved Eyler wasn't just killing, he was collecting. The burial site suggested a comfort zone. Then another grave was uncovered in Effingham County, Illinois, the body of Richard Edward Bruce Jr., 25, who was killed May the 18th, 1983. And then Ralph Irvin Calise, 28, who was found August the 31st, 1983, in Lake County, Illinois, who had been stabbed more than a dozen times. Eric R. Hansen, who was 18, found October the 4th, 1983, in Kenosha County, Wisconsin, who was also suspected to be one of Eyler's victims, though not concisely proven. And David Block, 22, disappeared at the end of 1982, but his remains would be found on May the 7th, 1984. Eyler's victims spanned ages, states, and backgrounds, but the method was always the same: torture, stabbing, and the abandonment near a highway. And then later, in August of 1984, the body of Daniel Bridges, who was 16, was found in a Chicago alley. This was Larry Eyler's final known murder, and the one that finally led up to his capture. Police traced Bridges' last movements to Larry Eyler's apartment. When they entered, they found blood everywhere, along with ropes, surgical knives, and even handcuffs. Larry Eyler would finally be arrested. And in 1986, Larry Eyler was convicted of the murder of Daniel Bridges and sentenced to death in Illinois. But the full scope of his crimes wouldn't emerge until 1984, when Eyler, dying of AIDS at the age of 41, confessed to his attorney, Kathleen Zellner. He admitted to 21 murders in total, describing in chilling detail how he picked up his victims, tied them up, and then ultimately stabbed them during what he called fits of uncontrollable rage. His confession led to the closure of numerous cold cases, including those found in the Newton County grave. Larry Eyler died in March of 1994. Never executed, but finally unmasked as one of the Midwest's most prolific killers. The aftermath left scars across multiple states. Some victims remain unidentified for decades until DNA projects in the 2020s were able to confirm those names. Keith Lavelle Bibbs, once known as Adam Doe, would finally be given his identity back in 2023. John Ingram Bradenberg Jr. was confirmed the exact same year. For the families, it was a bittersweet closure after 40 years of silence. Larry Eyler's crimes forced law enforcement to coordinate across state lines, leading to early interagency databases for serial cases. His murders also brought renewed attention to the vulnerability of young gay men during the era when they were dismissed or ignored. Larry Eyler's reign of terror is a grim reminder of what can happen when society looks away. When victims on the fringes are ignored because of who they are. He left behind nothing but pain and a dark scar across the Midwest. But thanks to modern DNA technology and relentless advocacy, many of his victims now have their names again. And that, perhaps, is the only justice left. And if you find this video informative, consider subscribing for more deep dives into the darkest corners of history. And if you'd like us to cover other cults or psychological case studies, drop a comment below. Thank you for watching, stay curious, and stay grounded.